MLB opening day is a little over a month away. Let's talk roster changes and predictions. Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me, and today we're going to be talking about MLB 2024. This video is going to focus on the American League only, and my plan is to have the National League done by Thursday, so go ahead and subscribe if you aren't already so you don't miss that. Each of these teams is going to be broken down 3 different ways. I'm going to talk about the additions that they made during the winter. I'm also going to talk about players who left during the winter, and finally, in the black category, we're going to do some predictions. I'm not going to make a prediction for every team, just where I feel comfortable. At the top, you'll also see their record from 2023 and their win total line as it sits right now, either on DraftKings or FanDuel. Those are the only 2 books I pulled, so if you have other books available to you, I would encourage you to line shop on those. But I at least wanted to do a little bit of the legwork for you guys and get the lines from the 2 major books. We'll start with the Orioles, who were one of the bigger surprise teams in 2023, winning over 100 games. They do add Corbin Burnes, a pitcher from the Brewers, which I think bolsters this rotation quite a bit, although they do lose Kyle Gibson and a few other guys, Adam Frazier and Aaron Hicks. As far as my predictions for this team, FanDuel and DraftKings both had the line at 89.5, and my only consideration with this team, I'm not going to touch that win total, but their line to win the AL East is plus 220. Obviously, the favorite in that division right now is the New York Yankees, and after their season last year, I know they battled injuries, but I'm not sure if I am personally sold on the Yankees yet, so I have my eye on that plus 220 for the Orioles, who didn't lose a ton and did gain a ace on the mound. I think they have a decent shot at the division. Next up is the Tampa Bay Rays, who won just under 100 games last year. DraftKings right now has their line at 84.5. They did pick up Ryan Pepiot from the Dodgers, but he doesn't have a ton of games in the MLB, so it's really hard to say. As for departures, they lose Tyler Glasnow, they lose Manny Margot, and they lose Luke Rowley, and they only have 1 active catcher on their roster right now. I would imagine that changes before the season actually kicks off, but it is something to keep your eye on. As for predictions, in the last 6 years, they've gone over that total, 84.5, 5 times. So the Rays have been a really solid team for the last half decade, but I predict regression with this team. I just think they started falling off a little bit towards the end of the year last year. Their pitching was inconsistent. Obviously, they have the Wander Franco drama. There's just a lot going against this team right now. So while I'm not saying I'm placing a bet on the under, I do definitely lean under on that total. The Blue Jays won 89 games in 2023, and right now their line is at 86.5, just slightly below last year's performance. As far as additions goes, they get IKF from the Yankees, they get Justin Turner and Kevin Kiermaier. They lose a lot of guys, though. Matt Chapman, Brandon Belt, Whit Merrifield, and a couple of pitchers. I don't have a lean for this team. I am optimistic about them, even though they've lost some pieces. I think they'll be right around that 86.5, so I'm not touching it, but I am optimistic for this team. The Yankees had one of the more disappointing seasons last year, winning only 82 games. Yes, only 82, but DraftKings has them at 93.5 this year. Obviously because of their addition with Juan Soto and potentially Marcus Stroman, but don't sleep on Alex Verdugo and Trent Grisham. I love both of those guys, especially on Dinger Tuesdays, so they will definitely be names that I talk about in some videos moving forward. As for departures, they do lose some key pieces. We just talked about IKF leaving, and he was a young guy who really was, I thought, starting to pick up some momentum, but I think they replaced him well with Juan Soto and Alex Verdugo and Trent Grisham. So I think as far as the offseason goes, the Yankees made the right moves, but they have to rebound, and more importantly than just rebounding, they have to stay healthy. That was their biggest thing last year. If they can stay healthy, I think they'll probably get close to, if not over, that 93.5 total. They have to after last year, right? The Boston Red Sox won 78 games last year, and DraftKings has them about the same right now, 79.5. As for additions, I'm not very blown away by the additions. Lucas Giolito has not been the same, wasn't the same last year as he has been in years past. Tyler O'Neill is a great player, I believe a one-time or two-time Golden Glove winner. And Vaughn Grissom, young guy from the Atlanta Braves last year. As for departures, they lose some pitchers. They lose Justin Turner, which I wouldn't say he was the most productive for them last year anyway. Verdugo, obviously, and Adam Duvall, who had some walk-offs for him, a veteran guy who I think brings leadership. And so I do think that should not be understated. I think that will hurt this team more than it looks like on paper. As for my predictions, I lean the under. I think they get worse on paper than they did after last year. So I would watch that line. I don't think they win 80 games this year, so that is one prediction that I like. Boston Red Sox under win total. Minnesota Twin City Twins, 87 and 75 last year. They add Carlos Santana and Anthony DeSclafani, and they lose about half their team. Not really, but they lost a lot of players and a lot of role players, bats in the middle of the lineup that I think were productive for them, besides Joey Gallo. Very underwhelming year last year. So I am actually low on this team. I know I say I have no lean, but I am hesitant to endorse the Twins as the winner of this division. Right now, they're a minus 105 favorite, and I don't love them to win. I think there's more value other places. It all comes down to Byron Buxton, as tough as that is to say, and as annoying as that is to say, and as much as we're done hearing about him being injured, can he stay healthy? Can he play a full year? And if he can, this team is competing for the division and probably has a better chance than not to win it. But I am not sold that he's going to be able to do that. I also think they need to replace this rotation. Sonny Gray was one of the biggest producers in the MLB last year, and they lose him. So a lot of questions for this team. I think a lot of losses that may catch up to them. So I lean under 86.5 for the Twins. Tigers win 78 games last year, and DraftKings has them at 80.5. As for the additions, they get a couple pitchers and an outfielder in Mark Canha, but they lose Miggy, who, is to be expected, and Rodriguez. I lean the over with this line. I know it's a little higher than last year, but I think on paper they are much more improved than they are last year. And this is a young team. So all the youth they had last year only grows, only gets to be transformed into more experience. And if they pulled off 78 wins last year with an inexperienced team with kind of iffy pitching, I think if they can get their pitching in order and they can stay healthy, I think this is a young team with promise. So I see them closer to 85 wins this season in a division that isn't too strong. So yeah, take Detroit over 80.5. The Guardians were 76 and 86 last year. They add Austin Hedges and Carlos Carrasco. They lose Quantrill and Oscar Gonzalez. And here's the deal. This team doesn't hit well. This team does not produce on offense. One of the lowest in runs scored last year. And I fear that they rely too much on Naylor and Ramirez to carry this offense. And if those two are in a slump, if those two are hurt, I don't know how this team scores more than 4 runs in the majority of their games. I know that may be a little bit harsh. So to have them higher than they were last year, when I don't think they made any offseason moves that tell me their offense is going to be improved, I say bet the under on the Guardians, 78.5. The Chicago White Sox were unimpressive last year, winning only 61 games, and they decided that this offseason was theirs. They were going to own this offseason, adding Nicky Lopez, Paul DeJong, Maldonado, Stassi, and then 8 pitchers. They added 8. I didn't want to list them all. They added 8 pitchers, mostly reliever guys rather than rotation guys, but still, as for departures, they lose Tim Anderson, which I think is a big piece, Grandal, and 9 pitchers they get rid of. They just cleaned house. They just wiped everything clean. So this is a lot of turnover, and there is still talks that Dylan Cease is not going to be with this team on opening day. Now he's going through spring training with them, so I would think they'd get on it sooner rather than later, but they don't seem to be. This is just a stay away for me. If I had to lean, I guess I would say over. I'm optimistic that some of these pieces mixed with both decent bats and, more importantly, some veteran leadership that can maybe change the motivation and the ethics in the locker room. I lean the over, I guess, but I'm staying away from this one. The Kansas City Royals are the biggest mover in terms of 2023 to 2024 that we have in the American League. 56 wins last year, and FanDuel has them all the way up to 73.5. That is absolutely massive. So they add Michael Wacha, they add Hunter Renfroe, and they add Adam Frazier. And all they lose is Zach Greinke, which is not really a loss, guy who did not. He just didn't. He does not have it anymore. Good guy, funny guy, but as far as dealing it's not the same as it once was. The 56 is low, but the 73.5, the 73.5 is insane to me. I stay away. That is a crazy prediction for a team that has not played a game since last year to move them up almost 20 games. Insane. I'm staying off this. The Houston Astros won 90 games last year, exit from the playoffs to the Rangers. A little bit disappointing. They had a couple guys that I don't think make a ton of difference. They lose Michael Brantley, who they had already more or less lost anyway, Maldonado, and they lose 3 relievers. I'm actually predicting that they have a quiet year. Dusty Baker's out. Joe Espada is in. I think they regress. I would bet the under in this one. I don't see them being a better team than they were last year, and the total is higher than they were last year. So I think Dusty Baker's retirement hurts them. I think while it is sometimes good to have a change of scenery and more youth in a leadership position these days, I'm not sold on this team. I think we're due to see the Houston Astros fall off just a little bit. The Texas Rangers win the World Series last year, only winning 90 games. I say only, that's still impressive. They add Tyler Mahle, which doesn't really strike me in any sort of way. No pun intended. I'm not impressed. I wasn't impressed with what he was doing in Cincinnati. They also add 2 relievers. They lose Mitch Garver, Jordan Montgomery, and Aroldis Chapman, but they still have a strong group of pitchers, DeGrom, Scherzer. But those 2 and Mahle are all injured right now and could be missing up to half the season. So I know they still have Eovaldi. I know they still have depth at that position, but I'm worried. I'm worried that this team also has a bit of a regression. So I too many question marks, so I'm staying away. The Seattle Mariners win 88 games last year, and FanDuel has their total lower than that this year. And I think they get better on paper, and we can argue that because obviously they lose Eugenio Suarez, which was probably the biggest bat they had outside of Rodriguez. Hernandez was a big piece as well, and Jared Kelenic wasn't bad. They lost some big names, but they added some small pieces. I mean, Mitch Garver, Polanco. So I just think that Seattle actually improves. I think they add a little more depth. They add a little bit more positional balance, and I am optimistic about this team. So I would lean the over 86.5 for the Mariners. This is weird to me. 73 games won last year, and the total win prediction on FanDuel is the same. I don't know, like FanDuel knows they lost Ohtani, right? Like that was the biggest offseason move that we saw. And I'm confused how they're predicting the Angels to not change at all. What did they add? They added Aaron Hicks. Of course, Mike Trout we can predict is going to be more healthy this year. But this is weird to me. And when things are weird like this, and I've talked about this before on this channel, when things are so weird I don't get it, I typically stay away because I'm like, there's a piece missing that I don't understand. But they've lost more than they added by a mile. And I think that them having the same record without Ohtani is a little bit ridiculous. So I do like the under. The Oakland A's had 50 wins last year. DraftKings has them at 56.5. They add a couple of pitchers and Abraham Toro. They lose Tony Kemp and James Caprillion. This team is just bland. Too many questions. It's a pass for me, staying away from the A's. Those are all the teams in the American League. And real quick, before we end the video, I want to talk about division winner futures. We have the 3 divisions here, and I've highlighted some things that caught my eye. I do think ultimately the Yankees are probably the best bet in the AL East, but if they struggle to get some chemistry and some momentum and to stay healthy, I do think the Orioles are a good price at $220. Not saying I'm going to bet it. I do think the best value you have on this whole list is the Detroit Tigers at plus 350, a young team that no one's talking about right now. And like I said with the Twins, I think they lost more than they gained in the offseason, especially in their rotation. So give me Detroit Tigers at plus 350, probably something I'm going to throw a free bet or two on in the coming days or weeks. And finally, for the AL West, I'm not on the Astros this year. And if the Rangers can get some of those pitchers back sooner rather than later, I do like the Rangers. But again, the Mariners, I think, added a lot of pieces that will help them. And if their pitching can keep coming along with George Kirby and company, I think the Mariners at plus 300 is a good bet. So these are just some things to keep your eye on as we approach the season. I'm not endorsing these as plays necessarily, but definitely things that I am considering as I do predict some of these top teams regress just a little bit. Thank you guys for coming by. Remember, on Thursday, 2 days from now, I will release my National League preview in the same fashion. So make sure you are subscribed to the Green Means Go channel. Also, if you got a baseball buddy that you're getting into an argument with about who's better than who, how many wins are they going to win, send them this video and let them know Green Means Go has the locks. No, I don't. But we'll see you next time.